What's up? This is Tiger Bucks on Fire. And today I just came across this really interesting article. I've kind of been thinking about this. I've been looking at the NBA standings, and I was just comparing the records of these teams, in both conferences. And it's getting really, really interesting because the Eastern Conference is clearly overachieving this season, and the Western Conference is clearly underachieving. And why this is really significant, and why I think it's really important for fans to pay attention to this, is because the Western Conference is always raved about being so much better than the East. And we thought clearly it would be this season because all these superstars moved to these Western Conference teams, and now we have these really top-heavy Western Conference teams that are more built to be contenders than most of the Eastern Conference teams you would typically think would be, based on how they're put together. Especially like my Milwaukee Bucks. Like I never stop hearing how like a team with one superstar, it's not going to be enough. It's this stuff is always just constantly reiterated in NBA sports media, on like every show, ESPN, First Take, The Jump, like all Undisputed. There, every single sports analyst talks about how teams have to be basically top heavy, to win the finals. And I've gone back in time. I've looked through the NBA Finals winners, and now, granted, you have a lot of dynasties that won championships, but there's actually quite a few teams that have actually won the NBA Finals without being built this way. I'm not saying that it's not a thing. I'm not saying that it's not an accurate trend, but it's not the end all. It's not like it's never happened before, where you can be built a little bit differently. But I'm actually going to write a more in-depth article about that. What I really wanted to bring up here is this really good article that I found that actually consolidates some really good stats, which I was going to look for, but they're actually in this article. And I just want to show you what's happening in the NBA right now. And, it's a small sample size. We're not even at halfway through the season. And I get it, the Western Conference has been dominant for many years now, but we're seeing some change this year. It's really interesting how much better the Eastern Conference is than we thought, and how much worse the Western Conference is than we thought. So let me just pull up or scroll down here and show you some of the stats that this article points out. It's really, really good. I will suggest just reading the whole thing, but really what I'm about to show you right now gets to the meat and potatoes of it. So the Eastern Conference versus the Western Conference currently right now sits at 76 and 75 in terms of win-losses. So they actually, wait, let me make sure I'm reading that right for the season. Yeah, okay, yeah. So their record is 76 to 75. So it's virtually a tie with the Eastern Conference having one game advantage. So we're always talking about the Western Conference being better. Like all these teams in the Western Conference currently would theoretically have a harder strength of schedule, assuming that they've already played more Western Conference teams than the Eastern Conference. Like, this stuff gets really, really vague. A lot of NBA analysts never look this deep. It's like, yeah, I know you play in that Western Conference if you're a Western Conference team, but strength of schedule still matters. At the end of the day, like at the end of the season, you're going to play pretty much all the same teams. In the Eastern Conference, you'll play Eastern Conference teams a little bit more. Western Conference, you'll play Western Conference teams a few more times. But you do end up playing every single team in the NBA a couple times at least. And really, you can't say someone has a harder schedule up until the current point, unless you actually look at their strength of schedule. It doesn't matter if they play the Western Conference or Eastern Conference, because you don't know how their schedule is laid out. You don't know if they've been playing more Western Conference teams or more Eastern Conference teams through the current point in the schedule or not. So I get really sick and tired of hearing like guys like Stephen A. Smith or Max Kellerman or whoever it is talk about strength of schedule, just referring to the conference you're in versus actually looking up strength of schedule online. ESPN has a great chart. Okay, just do NBA strength of schedule, and it will pull up the it's not called SOS or strength of schedule. It has that on there, but it's called something else. Actually, I'll just pull it up real quick. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I don't remember the website address. NBA. Oops. Percent or oh yeah, there we go. RPI. Okay, NBA relative percent index. Okay, let's just look at it real quick. So RPI, I don't know exactly what that means. That's not really strength of schedule. That's a certain formula. That one's kind of hard to understand, but this is all you really need to know. I'm just saying this is probably the most accurate strength of schedule stat that we actually have. Okay, so right now, so Milwaukee, they've had an easy schedule. 23rd hardest schedule, you can say, which, at least it's not at the bottom, but yeah, lately they've had a really easy schedule, okay? But then you have the Lakers, who are the other top team. They're still a bottom half strength of schedule team too, and they're in the Western Conference. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, they play in the West, but really the teams that they played thus far really have been a kind of a cakewalk too, so that's why I wanted to show you on this chart. This is a really good chart, though. It shows some other really good stats like expected win-loss percentage and wins and losses. But let's go back to the article here, okay? Okay, so we have that stat, 76 to 75 losses. It also says 7 teams in the East owning a winning record, while only 6 teams in the West have more wins than losses. A few days ago, I noticed that too. The top teams down to like the 7th team in the conference have a better record. Also, 4 teams in the East have a 700% winning percentage compared to the 2 in the West. That's really interesting. And I guess only 6 teams in the West are above 500. So once again, it suggests that this conference isn't nearly as deep as you would think it is. Okay, and then the top 4 teams really are neck and neck. The Bucks and the 76ers, and we're talking long term, the Bucks and the 76ers versus LA and LA. Most people are going to pick LA and LA over the Bucks and Sixers in terms of long term championship contention odds, in terms of winning it. But it's so close. It's like, yeah, LA and LA have the 2 better superstars. But as far as teams, as far as what they're doing right now, and still what I expect these teams to be, it's not like there's a huge advantage there. I really don't see it. I think the 76ers will come around, and the Bucks are obviously just killing everybody, and the Bucks are gonna be a different team in the postseason. So even there, if you give the Western Conference advantage, it's not a huge one. And then moving on, it talks about power rankings. Right there, I think those are some pretty good stats. And actually, if you factor in that Kevin Durant hasn't even played yet, or Victor Oladipo, gosh, is the Eastern Conference about to become the better conference in the league starting next year? When these 2 guys come back, that could very, very easily happen. Like, if you just look at the standings, you just look at some of the teams in the East right now, all the way down to the 6th seed, the Pacers. All 6 of the top seeds in the Eastern Conference are damn good. They're all 679% winning percentage or better. That's really freaking good. Okay? The Pacers are playing really good even without Victor Oladipo. And Philly is underachieving. And then you have Toronto, Miami, and Boston who've been really, really good all season. Then of course, the heavyweights out the Bucks. But even, Brooklyn and Orlando aren't horrible. Well, Orlando's pretty bad, but all I'm saying, those top 6 seeds, I would take those top 6 seeds probably over the top 6 seeds in the West right now. It's close. I don't know, because the top 6 seeds in the East are definitely deeper, 1 through 6, but the top teams in the West are better, like top 2, top 3. It's more top heavy. I would arguably take Dallas over Denver right now, even though they're 1 game behind. But yeah, so I know that's interesting too. It's very close regardless. We got to see a whole season play out before we proclaim the East being better or even, really on the same level, because this is small sample size. But based on what we have, they are on the same level, if not better. And then finally, we have net rating. Okay, and once again, this is really even. Okay, so net rating, the Bucks are just slaughtering everybody like they did last year. They're just looking like they could just be a regular season destroyer for years to come. Hopefully that's not it. I really hope not, because I'm a huge Bucks fan. But it's still fun to see your team be really good in the regular season too. Regular season does matter too. But if you look at the top 10 teams, it's half and half. There's 5 teams in the top 10 in net rating for each conference. Okay, Bucks, Boston, Celtics, Raptors, Pacers, and 76ers are all top 10 net rating teams. And then you got LA, Dallas, Denver, and Houston. Okay, and then if you go down to the next top 20, which doesn't matter as much. Okay, then you got Miami, Utah, Phoenix, Oklahoma, Brooklyn, Detroit. Okay, so it's pretty much split. It's like every other. It's pretty much split. That's pretty much all I really wanted to show you. Who cares about these other stats? I'm just looking at like the more overall macro team stats that matter the most. But yeah, check out that article. Let me pull it up again if you want to dive in more. Yeah, it's from CBS. So yeah, it's a really interesting article because this stuff just gets talked about so heavily on sports media and in NBA discussions. So it's actually not true. Like right now, these conferences are dead even, and I think it really matters when we're talking about who's going to go to the finals, who's going to win it all, because they're always talking about strength of schedule and everything. So really, it's neck and neck. You can't really say like some of these Eastern Conference teams are at a disadvantage because they're not playing as hard as teams. It's not true at all. But the NBA wants to make you think that. They manipulate you. They brainwash you. They don't. All these analysts don't really update themselves on stats, like hardly ever. They just generalize too often. So this is the truth. This is actually what's happening right now, even in a small sample size that we have thus far. But it is what it is. So peace out, Tiger.